welcome. This is our small blog Synesthesia. So the first question we would like to ask you is, how would you describe your creative process? And, because we've stalked you a little bit on the internet, would you say that fly fishing helps you to get in the mood to get super creative?
My creative process.
Yes.
I can describe it as being, in one word, difficult.
Okay.
Now, it's arduous sometimes,
Yes.
and sometimes not. I've just completed a first draft of a film about Miles Davis,
With Denzel Washington.
not playing. He's not going to play
He's directing.
Miles Davis. He's going to direct it, and it has been one of the hardest things I've ever tackled in my life.
Really?
Very, very difficult. Even harder than the King's Speech. I've never worked on anything harder in my life. First of all, he's a very difficult man, very complex. He's a real MF,
Yeah.
which is one of his favorite words, of course. So I call this my MF movie.
Oh, wow.
But getting through, there's also a huge cultural difference. I mean, I had a very lovely first meeting with Denzel at a sushi restaurant. That man can really eat sushi.
Oh, I bet.
But we were talking, and with his producer, who is a lovely man from the Caribbean.
Yes.
And I said, guys, there's only one thing that's bothering me. You may not have noticed, but I'm not black.
I'm sure they didn't.
And Denzel looked at me and he said, don't worry, I am. And I knew I was in good hands at
Yes,
that point.
right.
But that is a factor.
Yes.
You know, here I am. I'm very white. You know, just my upbringing, my education, everything. And I had to get myself deeply into the soul and mind of a very complex, intelligent, gifted, genius black man.
Yes.
And the other thing that concerned me was the language. Would I be able to get the rhythm and the syntax correctly? Well, apparently I have, because the producer at least has read the first draft already and is very, very pleased with it. So I guess I pulled it off, but it was tough.
And how long did it take you to write them?
Well, there were some interruptions, so I would say about 6 months.
6 months.
Going to your fly fishing question, yeah, that's my release.
I see.
That's my form of exercise. Well, I do Pilates,
Oh, that's really good.
but fly fishing also is exercise, balancing on the rocks and all of that. It gets me back in touch with nature, which I think is terribly important. I think one of the tragedies of our age is that we have become so detached from nature and its cycles. And also there is the metaphor that I really enjoy. I'm a fly fisherman. I don't use bait and stuff like that.
Yes.
So you send out your cast this little artificial bunch of feathers that's supposed to look like an insect. It lands on the water, and if you're lucky, this thing comes up from the depths, grabs it. Well, that's not dissimilar from writing, because what you hope, at least I hope, is that something will come up from my subconscious that I have not been aware of, and that will give the story and my writing depth and something new.
So would you say that you actually fish for your ideas?
I fish for my ideas, nicely put.
Yeah, well, that's really nice. Then, since we're here because of the King's Speech, of course, I would like to ask you, how did you feel the first time you ever saw the feature film? The movie.
Yeah. The first time I saw it was in the editing room,
Okay.
and it was a rough cut. It was Tom Cooper's first assemblage. And I thought, oh my goodness, I've got a tiger by the tail here. I don't think they understand what's going to happen, because everybody was still talking about it. Well, it's going to be a nice little art film that'll play for people 50 and over, and it'll be a very, very small release. And I thought, no, they're wrong. And I didn't want to say it because that sounded like some very bad hubris on my part.
Yeah.
So I kept my mouth shut. So the first time I saw it, as you've seen it, was at the well, the first time it played was at the Telluride Film Festival, and the beloved Harvey Weinstein would not fly me to Telluride to see the premiere of my own movie, so I paid for it myself, but I couldn't get the correct flight, so I arrived just as the movie was closing. But everybody was cheering and standing up, so I thought,
that's a good thing.
I thought that's a good sign.
Yes,
you
yes.
see, that's better than booze. And the first time I really saw it was at the Toronto Film Festival, which is a huge,
very important festival.
and it's a big, big venue. And we were up on the first row of the balcony. There was Tom Hooper, there was Colin Firth, there was Jeffrey Rush. We were all sitting there, and it finished, and everybody stood up, and tears were just streaming down my face. And then they put searchlights on us, and here I am caught with stuff coming out of my nose and eyes. And it was, but that, yes, it was it was a big moment.
Well, it's really nice to hear. I wanted to ask you also, I read that your uncle actually went to see Dr. Lowe, who
Yes.
is the king's doctor. So what did you feel the moment you found out about that connection?
I thought, Uncle, why didn't you tell me? He had known about the project for quite a while. He let me stay in his apartment in London while I was trying to get this thing going. It was all on my own buck. Nobody was financing this thing at first. So I was trying to keep expenses down. And he knew about it, and then he said, oh,
By the
could
way,
no, then he didn't even say that. He said, oh, I'd rather like to read the script. You see, he's very English.
I see.
So I gave him the script, yes. And then really, at the last minute, just as we were going into production, he said, yes, that Logue fellow, Australian, right? I said, yes, you've read the script, he's Australian. Yes, I saw him for quite a while, Your grandfather sent me that because he was a stutterer too.
Yeah.
And I said, Uncle David, because his name is David, I said, Uncle, why didn't you tell me? Oh, well, I don't, but it was rubbish, you see. I said, what do you mean rubbish? What happened in these sessions? Nothing, he says. The man was a crook. He was an absolute fraud. He asked me things about my childhood, you see.
Yeah.
I said, Uncle, you don't stutter anymore. Oh, I would have outgrown it, I'm sure. Now, there was another connection with Logue, which is kind of interesting, that I heard about. He cured Rupert Murdoch's father of stuttering. Rupert Murdoch's father, as a young man, desperately wanted to be a reporter, but couldn't be a reporter because he couldn't interview people because he stuttered so badly. And Logue, in Australia, before he came to England, cured him, and so he went on to create a great news empire. And so he is directly responsible for saving the British monarchy, and he's responsible for Fox News.
For all the tabloids, I know. Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Logue, right?
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Logue.
Yeah, well, I also wanted to ask you, my mother has like a kind of a personal question, but she's a scriptwriter. And she writes for television, for the stage, and she's now doing her first feature film. They're actually producing it. So what would your advice for her and for all the screenwriters be, for, like in their first movie? What to expect, what not to expect, right?
Expect to be taken advantage of.
Right.
You'll get a bad deal. Guaranteed.
I'm sure she did.
Guaranteed you'll get
Really
a
she
bad
did.
contract.
Right.
try, if humanly possible, to be there, not through the entire thing, because really, once they get going, it's like watching paint peel on the wall. But it's really important to be there in the pre-production time, because that's when you lose your script. That's when it gets taken away from you. For very practical reasons, that they don't understand the effect upon your creative work. And then I'll give you an example. A head of a department will come in and they say, sorry, we can't do the scene at the bridge at night. It just can't be done. We can't get the police permits or anything like that. Well, a producer may very well then say, all right, we'll cut the scene. We just won't do that scene. Well, no, because if you don't do that scene, 40 pages later, something happens and it doesn't make sense anymore.
Yes.
So if the writer is there, say, whoa, no, you don't cut that scene. That's an essential scene. Give me half a day and I'll bring it back, rewritten, a different location, a different time of day, but we'll have the same information in it. And you end up saving the producers thousands of dollars if they'll let you be there. It's also wonderful to be there if there is a rehearsal period for the actors,
yes,
so they can ask questions.
Or reading, right?
Reading, exactly. And then usually it's great if you can hang in there for the first, shall we say, week or 10 days of filming, when actors still have questions. Once they stop asking questions, leave, because you're only going to gain weight eating all the donuts at the coffee table. So leave town.
That's okay. Leave the country, right?
Yeah.
Okay. I wanted to ask you also, I don't know if these are like too many questions, but what would you say are the main differences between your stage version and your screen version of The King's Speech?
All right. Good and reasonable question. The first difference is just inherent. That is, in film, the performance is frozen. That's it. When that director's cut, the studio cut goes out to the world, that is the performance you're going to get no matter where you see it. Theater, it's different every night. The chemistry is different, and the work changes subtly. So that I think is rather an exciting difference. I was able to get actually more humor into the stage play. Tom Hooper, who did a wonderful job, but he was concerned that if it was too funny, people wouldn't take it seriously, and that has been proved false because, first of all, they laugh at the film. There's a lot of humor in it. But in the play, there's even more, and it doesn't detract from the seriousness of it at all. I was also able to bring in more of the politics. What was happening in the world with Hitler,
Yes.
with David being enamored with Hitler. I think it's just tighter.
And it's because also you lived in London during the Second World War,
Yeah,
right?
well,
You had to leave.
I had to leave London.
Due to the
because-
Blitzkrieg.
Due to the Blitz, correct,
Yeah.
correct. Well, after the Battle of Dunkirk is when we were.
Did you see the movie?
Hmm?
Did you see the movie Dunkirk?
I did.
Did you like it?
No,
You didn't?
no,
Well,
no.
why?
Well, I thought it would. They spent a lot of money on that thing, but not all of it got there. Things like that beach was mayhem, chaos.
Yes.
It was being strafed. People were dying. And here in the film, it was a bunch of orderly soldiers standing in rows, waiting for the boats. That is not what it was like. How come there were no airplanes in the sky except for 3 German planes and 2 British planes? I mean, I felt very let down by it. And, of course, the most moving part of Dunkirk is when every little boat in England came out there to rescue men. And in the film, it was just, like 20, 30 boats. It didn't capture the grandeur of that moment. So I will never be able to work with him again, but that's all right.
Well, I'm pretty sure he's gonna watch this video.
Yeah, I'm sure he will. He's gonna.
He has to, right?
Yes.
Well, now just to wrap it up.
Okay.
Can I ask you some quick ping pong questions? So I ask and you just say one answer really quick.
Sure.
No, I think we have no more time. I'm sorry.
Really? They're gonna do ping pong.
All right, I think we'll.
Let's play ping pong.
Okay. So what is your favorite movie?
Ooh, no, you can't pin it down to just one. But Rules of the Game, Grand Illusion have to be in there. Some of the Kurosawa movies, those would be my absolute favorites.
So favorite director?
Favorite director, Renoir and Kurosawa, probably. Francis Coppola in his early Godfather days.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Favorite book?
Favorite book? Wow, I really like Blood Meridian. Okay.
Favorite author?
Favorite author? Ford Madox Ford. A writer who is no longer really read a lot, but one of the greatest writers of the English language in the early 20th century. His Parade's End is magnificent. Read it.
Well, yeah,
It's
we'll look
wonderful.
him. Well, thank you very much
Thank
for
you.
your precious time.
Well, thank you.
Thanks.
Cheers.
Thank you. You're so kind.